Are you a dealer creating a workplace culture your employees are proud to be part of? Applications are now open for the 2026 Automotive News Best Dealerships to Work For program. This isn't just an award, it's a chance to get real insight into what's working at your dealership and where you can improve. And we've expanded the categories this year, recognizing everything from technician experience and leadership development to AI enablement and employee retention. The registration deadline is April 17th. Find out more and apply at autonews.com.
Finding the right car buyer shouldn't depend on luck. It should be powered by data. Experian Automotive gives dealerships accurate, actionable data insights into their prospects and customers so you can reach the right consumer with the right message at exactly the right moment. Smarter targeting, stronger engagement, more sales. Better marketing starts here. Visit ExperianAutomotive.com for more information.
Welcome to this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive for the fourth week of March 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. We're breaking down some of the biggest stories in the auto industry from the past week and looking forward to what's in store in the days ahead. We'll talk about Sony Honda Mobility pulling the plug on its Afeela EVs, Ford CEO Jim Farley's $27 million compensation package, Stellantis employees getting ticketed for driving the wrong brand to work, and we'll preview next week's New York Auto Show. Joining me, as always, to talk about these topics are Larry Velaquette, who covers Toyota, Mazda, and Subaru for us at Automotive News. Larry Legend, welcome back, sir.
Kel, once again, always great to spend my weekend with you.
And we're happy to have you here. And Michael Martinez, who covers Ford and the UAW for us. Mike, thanks for joining.
You are very welcome.
All right, guys. So, Larry, Sony Honda Mobility canceled its Afeela electric vehicles this week, just months before the first model was supposed to reach customers in California. What's your reaction?
So thank you first for not using the term pull the plug because because that's what they did. I think it's just the reality hit them square, square in the bottom line. They realized that they had an uphill fight because the Afeela, the way that they were going to do a direct sale, it was going to infuriate their dealers, much like Volkswagen has actively done with Scout. And the returns just were not going to be there because of the way that EVs are selling right now or the way they're not selling. So I think this was a last ditch, swerve away from the cliff off of California Highway 1, right at the last hairpin turn. I think that this was simply caution, and every Japanese automaker's bottom line when they report here at the beginning of next month, it's going to be really, really ugly. I'm talking monumentally ugly. So I think this was simple caution, right? Why throw on even more bad news because it was not going to sell.
So this was tied to Honda's broader retreat from EVs earlier this month. Mike, what does this say about the viability of those kinds of joint ventures, especially when one partner changes course?
I'm not so sure it's an indictment of these kind of JVs because we've seen plenty of automakers themselves fail miserably at EVs and lose a ton of money. So if Honda was doing this by itself, it probably would have resulted in the same outcome. I think at the end of the day, these JVs conceptually are still pretty smart, particularly this one, where you're combining an automaker with a technology company. You were hoping to get the best of both worlds in terms of expertise, in terms of the software that is increasingly being added to these new EVs, these new types of vehicles. And at the same time, the ability to share the costs that are associated with bringing a new brand to market. So I'm not sure that it failed because of the JV specifically, and I'm not sure it's necessarily a bad idea for automakers to look at in the future. Obviously, there is some caution. You have to be sure you are on the same page as your partner and that you are ready for whatever bumpy road will lie ahead here. But yeah, as Larry said, this was probably an inevitable result given where we are in the market right now.
All right, let's shift gears to executive compensation. Let's talk about the money. So, Mike, Ford CEO Jim Farley's total compensation rose to $27 million last year, in part because the company exceeded quality targets. But Ford also set a record for recalls in 2025. Please make this make sense. And how does this math work?
Yeah, I'm not sure it does make a whole lot of sense at the end of the day, but according to Ford's bonus structure, now executive compensation involves a number of factors. There's the base pay, there's stock awards, and bonuses. So Farley's base pay is unchanged. That's just $1.7 million, has been for years. His stock options sort of fluctuate year to year based on when things vest and if he buys more stock, sells it off, etc. But this year, the story is the bonus pay. His bonus pay jumped, I think, 255% because Ford exceeded its quality metrics. Now, it set two quality metrics, one for vehicles with 0 months in service and one for vehicles with 3 months in service. And according to its own calculations, executives hit 200% of that goal. It's the maximum they could hit. So both executives and salaried workers receive the maximum payout. The way it shakes out is they're getting 130% of their overall bonus target. So Farley's numbers jump 11%. So that's all well and good. It's how they structure things. But when you take a step back, I don't know that it's the best message to be sending, because you almost run the risk of having like a George Bush mission accomplished moment, because they are clearly not out of the woods when it comes to quality. Look at the numbers this year. They're already leading the league, so to speak, in recalls again. And Ford's thing is, don't look at the recalls. Those are a lot of old vehicles. It wasn't when the current regime was in. The processes and people are different. You have to give us time to get our stuff in place. A lot of these old models, we can't help it. But if you look at some of the recent headlines, February 26th, 4.3 million vehicles recalled because of a software error. It was 2021 to 2026 model year F-150s. It was 2022 to 2026 F-250s, Navigators, Expeditions, Mavericks, etc. A little earlier this month, 840,000 vehicles recalled for a camera glitch. 2021 to 2026 Broncos, 2021 to 2024 Edges. So these are not old vehicles. These are part of the Farley and Company regime. So I don't know that it's the message you want to be sending, that, hey, my pay is bumping up to the highest it's ever been. Our salaried workers are getting higher bonuses. Keep in mind, while at the same time this is happening, their blue collar workers lost about $4,000 this year in profit sharing because they had such an abysmal financial year. Now, obviously the UAW negotiated profit sharing. That's what they agreed to. So it is what it is. But again, it's not a great message coming out of Dearborn, and you have to wonder if they maybe need to reconsider how those bonuses are structured.
Larry, what's your take on this? Let us have it.
So since our executive producer won't let me make the joke I want to make, what I will tell you, Kel, is that I get where they're coming from. I think that the argument that they're making is a little specious. However, I want to point out something. When we talk about recalls, right, we use these gross numbers to tally them and keep track of them. But recalls by themselves, don't necessarily mean things were wrong. They mean things that they might want to improve. Relative to the number of recalls, very few of them are safety, okay, this is a real problem. We got to shut this down. You park your car outside, don't drive it. Very serious recalls, right? We do have a number of things going on. Number one, we are in an era when the vehicles that are right now in market, many of those were designed during COVID, and the engineers were working remotely. They weren't working in their offices. This is especially true with the engine recalls, right? That made it especially difficult to troubleshoot and to get all the bugs out of it because they just weren't in the office, right? So we're living with a lot of that right now as an industry. That's not just Ford, that's everybody. But I really think that we take the wrong view of recalls, and society does. Yeah, recalls are a pain in the butt to have, to take your car in, but every recall makes your car better, and it does so for free. And it shows, actually, if they're done right by the automaker, if they lean into it, it shows that the automaker's still backing their product, right? And still taking care of their product. So this is really a marketing issue at its core, that we take such a dim view of recalls and we look at them as, these are, marks on what should be a perfect vehicle. It's not. Their vehicles are complicated, and designing them and producing them are complicated, and things go wrong. And if automakers lean into it and say, hey, yeah, we know things are going to go wrong, but we're going to make it right, as a consumer, I'm going to feel a lot better about that than I am, oh, okay, I got to take my car in for X, Y, or Z, especially if it's a software update. That, to me, a lot of automakers have leaned into the over-the-air thing, and it works, but they still have to go through the NHTSA recall process. So I don't think that they're necessarily as bad as what we make them out to be.
So a couple quick points. The first being, to Larry's point, yeah, the recalls I mentioned, software related, relatively easy fix. Another point I think it's worth noting is that Farley and the executive team probably do need to balance knowing that they have a lot of work still to do with keeping morale high right now. Because in their defense, they have made strides on initial quality. They did pretty well in the last JD Power IQS study, although they still came in just under the industry average, but they're trending up. And Ford says, based off its own internal metrics, they had the best full year initial quality they've had in a decade or so. So it is probably fair to reward the salaried employees in some way. I'm just saying it's maybe not the best look when you have a headline saying, executive pay is going up so much because of better quality when there's still so much work left to be done.
Yeah, you're right. That looks like hell. or any other adjective you want to throw in there that's a little stronger. The one thing I will say, and Mike knows this well, Kel, is the problem with IQS is that the older your model lineup is, the better you do on IQS, because you've worked all the kinks out, right? So the IQS measures the first 3 months of ownership. You take the initial quality survey. If you've got a car that's 10 or 12 years old, all right, a model that's 10 or 12 years old, well, you better have that dialed in by then.
Good stuff, guys. Coming up after the break, Stellantis is ticketing employees who park competitor vehicles in premium spots, and we'll preview next week's New York Auto Show. That's next on Weekend Drive.
Almovio is taking aim at one of the most fundamental parts of vehicle safety, braking. And the company says its next-generation systems can cut stopping distance by meters.
And at the same time, we also see cost advantages for the final customer. Because of maintenance topics, it's significantly less maintenance or even maintenance-free over lifetime of the entire product.
On this week's episode of the Automotive News Shift podcast, we'll hear from Dennis Fritsch, Vice President of Almovio's Safety and Motion Division. He breaks down how Almovio is improving braking performance, including its push toward brake-by-wire and dry brake technology that eliminates traditional hydraulics. I'm Molly Boygon, tech and innovation reporter at Automotive News. Join me on Shift, available this Sunday wherever you get your podcasts.
Automotive consumer marketing is complex. Customer data is constantly changing. People move, email addresses change, loans end, leases expire, and vehicles are traded in. Without accurate and up-to-date data, you risk spending money targeting the wrong people at the wrong times. This is where Experian Automotive Marketing Solutions can help. Our solutions help dealer marketers find, reach, and retain customers for life. By leveraging powerful vehicle, consumer, and credit insights, Experian enables you to identify who is actively in the market before your competitors do. You'll know who is coming off lease, who is in positive equity, who is likely to purchase in the next 30, 60, or 90 days, and who is due for service. Activate our highly targeted automotive audiences, reaching in-market buyers, near-market shoppers, service customers, and loyalty segments with precision. The best part? Our measurement solutions connect your marketing efforts directly to verified vehicle sales, allowing you to measure real ROI, not just impressions and clicks. Better marketing starts here. Visit ExperianAutomotive.com for more information.
Welcome back to Weekend Drive. I'm Kellen Walker with Larry Bellaquette and Michael Martinez. All right, Mike, so we've heard about company parking lot rules before, but Stellantis is apparently getting serious about enforcing them. What is going on?
Yeah, so the workers up there in Auburn Hills are seeing tickets on their vehicles. Apparently, there's no fines involved, so they're not out any money. But if they get enough of these warning notices, they could get a boot on their car, which could be very inconvenient. Now, this isn't exactly uncommon in the industry. I think all the Detroit Three at some point have had pretty strict rules around this. If you've been to any UAW plants or facility anytime in your life, you cannot even park in their parking lot. If you have a foreign built vehicle, you have to park it literally on the street down the road somewhere. It's probably happened to many of us reporters going to union events. But I think the issue here, Kel, is that you're seeing a lot of newer workers who maybe aren't used to the old way of doing things, particularly newer workers since the pandemic, when most folks have been working from home. And now Stellantis is calling them all back into the office. So they're getting a taste of this for the first time, and they don't exactly like it. The reason we know about this story is because people have been complaining on Reddit, and it made its way to the news stations. So I'm not here to call them soft or to say suck it up and walk or buy a Stellantis product. There's
But
actually,
I am.
yeah, I'll leave that to Larry. But and in these workers' defense, there are some instances, hilariously, where security has ticketed older vehicles that used to be owned by Stellantis and no longer currently are, and they didn't realize that. So some of these workers do have legitimate gripes, but yeah, it's a shock to the system for some folks. Should it be? I don't know.
Larry, GM and Ford aren't enforcing these rules right now. What do you think the effect will be on employees? And is it worth the trouble for Stellantis?
I mean, we joke about this, but yeah, it's worth the trouble. If you're working there, the chances are you're getting a discount on their vehicles as an employee. If you're driving a competitive vehicle, you should know going in, unless you've been there less than 3 or 6 months, that you should probably buy one of the vehicles that your company is producing, right? That's how you keep track of the products that you're working on. Mike said he wasn't there to call out the softness. And really, this isn't a ticketing issue. It's a walking issue, right? It means that the folks that have these competitive cars have to walk a little further to go to the office, and it's a pain in the butt. Just like, especially in the winter in Auburn Hills, it really stinks. And all they got to do is maybe trade in that Tesla or trade in the Ford or the Toyota that they had, and go buy a Dodge or a Ram or a Jeep or whatever, really buy one of those, because you're going to want to buy something that they're going to hold on to, one of the brands that they're going to hold on to and not ditch.
Yeah, right.
So it's a walking issue. It's funny and it's fun to laugh at, but I get it. I understand it.
So I would say there's a famous story when Alan Mulally became CEO of Ford. One of his first days on the job, he pulled into the executive garage and he saw a lot of non-Ford luxury vehicles in the parking garage. And
were they Volvos and Aston Martins?
Yeah, some formerly owned by Ford that they sold during the Great Recession. But he, chastised the leadership team, and he sort of took that top-down approach and said, if we want more people to buy our cars, we need to drive them ourselves and be proud of what we're doing. So I don't know what the requirements are for Stellantis executives right now. I would hope they're doing the same thing. But you know what, Larry, in defense of the workers, we're talking week in and week out about the affordability crisis. You don't know what some of these guys can afford. Maybe they have an old beater that's not a Chrysler or Stellantis product, and it's not in the cards right now for them to trade it in. So, I mean, maybe that's a rare case, but yeah, I guess they'll have to get some good shoes.
All right, guys, let's look ahead to next week. The New York International Auto Show press days kick off Wednesday. Larry, you and I will be there at the Javits Center. What are you expecting to see?
Ironically, compared to most shows over the past couple of years, this actually has a couple of reveals coming, one of which, at least a couple of which, we don't know what it is, which is really surprising. The Hyundai Group showing some vehicles, and we don't know what they are. They've not shared them under embargo, as most automakers have done. So those are going to be surprises, which is it's an interesting turn, at least from a media standpoint. There's a new Subaru EV coming, a 3-row EV that is the sister vehicle of the Toyota Highlander. And we've got a refreshed Volkswagen Atlas. So from a news standpoint, it's the newsiest show that we've had in the U.S. in a while. Otherwise, I think what we're going to see is the same thing. We're going to see a lot of focus on consumers for really what auto shows have become, which is, shopping events, which is what they were beforehand. There's a little bit of grist there for us to deal with. But for the most part, it's going to be about dealers trying to meet up with shoppers to show their vehicles.
Mike, what stands out to you about the lineup this year?
Well, it seems like there's a little bit for everybody. I'm curious to see the Atlas. That's going to be the big volume vehicle. But I'll tell you what, that Genesis G90 wingback concept, I know design's subjective. I think that looks gorgeous. A sporty wagon is basically catnip for auto journalists. We all love a sporty wagon.
Is it brown with a manual transmission?
If they were smart, that would be the trifecta.
Man, I love a good wagon, man. I love a good wagon.
As does every auto journalist, it appears. But I think it looks great. I'd love to see that in person. It seems like if you are going to the show, either as a buyer or just an enthusiast, there's going to be something to spend your time on and to take a good look at walking around.
All right, guys. Mike, Larry, good stuff. Thank you so much for joining me.
Cal, it is always a wonderful way to spend our weekend every week.
Thanks, Cal.
That's all for this Weekend Drive edition of Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer for his help on today's podcast. You can get the latest news on electric vehicles, executive compensation, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back on Monday for a conversation with Dennis Fritsch, Vice President of Aumovio's Safety and Motion Division.
Basically, all OEMs are very interested in dry brake technologies. The question is, which one is finally the one who's bringing it first into application, and then in which application?
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.